Joining me now to break all of this down, America's accountant, Dan Geltrude. Dan, thanks so much for being back with us. It's great to have you.
Hey, Allison.
Hi. So, Dan, I remember when $1 million was a lot of money, but in 2023, what's the new definition of rich?
Well, it looks like it is north of $2 million in terms of net assets. And even when we think back and say, wow, $1 million is a lot, and it's not so much now, even $2 million plus isn't that much, especially depending on what part of the country that you live in. So when you look at people getting towards the end of their careers, let's say they're in that 65 or 70 age range, and they have a couple $1 million worth of net worth, well, you look at that and say, there's a pretty good chance that their home right off the bat is $1 million of it. So how much more do they have beyond that? And given where inflation is, and given where the stock market has been, and all the other factors that we look at, well, it's not hard to imagine that a couple $1 million is not going to sustain you for the rest of your life, because you have to add on top of that, most people's medical costs are going to happen when they are older than 65, and we know it's very easy to go through a lot of money towards the end of your life on medical costs. So rich is no longer rich.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. I'm scared for my future. Well, Dan, it's also interesting to note that 48% of Americans polled said they actually already feel wealthy, even if they only had a net worth of around $600,000. Dan, do you think this is because so many people nowadays are living on credit?
Yeah, there's no question about there's a shift in the way people are handling their finances. And what I would tell people out there, keep this in mind, love doesn't pay the rent. So keep that in mind. I mean, you really have to focus in on saving as much as you possibly can as early in your career as you can, because you need the value of compounding interest, compounding value over time. If you don't start saving for those golden years early in your career, you're going to find surprisingly that you simply don't have enough money. And that is really one of the big fears that many Americans have, is that they run out of money later in their life. So for those of you that are content and say money doesn't matter that much, well, that's great to have that point of view, and I'm sure you're very happy until you don't have money.
Yeah, that's a great point. Money is sort of essential, especially now. At the same time, Americans also believe they will have to work into retirement age. Dan, what potential implications could this have on the economy?
Well, it's interesting because what we don't know over the next few years and beyond is how much AI, artificial intelligence, is going to replace many jobs. So although people may have the intention to continue to work, there may not be the jobs to work at because they've been replaced by robots. So I would not look at retirement and say, well, I'll just keep working as long as I feel good. Okay. That's not a bad thing, other than the fact that you don't necessarily know whether those jobs are going to be available. So again, I go back to start saving for retirement as early as you possibly can.
Yep, that's a good point. We don't know how much longer it'll be until the robot takeover, I suppose. Now, Dan, the government obviously doesn't really care about how this affects Americans. When the debt ceiling deal was made, we were hovering around $31 trillion. We've now just hit $32 trillion after 2 weeks. Why and how did the government spend close to $1 trillion in just 2 weeks? I mean, how is this even possible?
Well, the people in Washington don't really have a handle on how to handle finances, right? Because if they were handling our personal finances, we would be bankrupt because we don't have the ability to print our own money, at least not without going to jail. So what you have is unbridled spending because no one is accountable.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.